Hey, everybody. Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. So what's happening now is unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. Millions of people all across the country are waking up to something that honestly should have been obvious all along. And that is that the best medicine isn't a pill, it's food. It's what we put on our plates, and it's what we feed our kids, starting when they're really small. And that's what determines whether they grow up healthy and thriving or whether they spend their whole lives battling chronic disease. That's the reality. And look, this movement, the MAHA movement, is about change. It's about real change, education, policy, getting loud about all this stuff. And as Secretary Kennedy has said, and he's absolutely right, this is not the fault of everyday Americans. You go to the grocery store, you buy what's on the shelves. Nobody handed you a warning label. The fault is in the food itself and in the fact that nobody's been honest with you about what's actually in it and about what it's doing to your body. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, ultra-processed food. You hear that term thrown around all the time. But what does it actually mean? Here's the deal. Ultra-processed foods are industrial products. They're made mostly, or sometimes entirely, from stuff that's been extracted from real food, oils, fats, sugars, starches, proteins, stripped out and reassembled. Then you've got chemically modified ingredients like hydrogenated oils. And then, and this is the important part that should make you angry, substances that are literally cooked up in a lab, flavor enhancers, artificial colors, emulsifiers, all kinds of additives. There's little to no actual whole food left in these things. So let me put it simply, ultra-processed food is the opposite of real food. It's the opposite of everything our new food pyramid stands for. And here's what you need to understand. These foods were never designed to keep you healthy. Nobody in a boardroom said, how do we nourish people? They said, how do we make this food last longer on a shelf? How do we make this cheaper to produce? How do we maximize profit? That's it. That's the goal. That's always been the goal. And a lot of the chemicals in this stuff, they're not just bad for you, they're addictive by design. We've created generations of Americans who are hooked on food that is making them sick. And it's a cycle, and it's brutal. MAHA wants to reduce the toxic load on all Americans, whether that's coming from food, drugs, vaccines, pesticides, whatever it is. We want it all to be on the table. Think about it, though. 70% of what our kids eat is ultra-processed, 70%. And we wonder why childhood obesity is going through the roof, why chronic disease is an epidemic. And this is why. We're fighting every single day to reverse it. Breaking this cycle of addiction, that's step one. That's the foundation. You do that and you've taken the most important step towards rolling back decades of chronic disease in this country. But we also need to talk about the good news, because there is good news. Real food is available. And despite what people think, eating real whole food does not have to cost more than loading up your cart with processed junk. It just doesn't. It's a myth that's been pushed on us, and we need to burst that myth wide open. And thanks to Secretary Kennedy and initiatives like Product of USA label, it's getting easier to know what you're buying, to identify food that's actually grown and produced by American farmers and ranchers. And programs like this make it easier and more affordable to be healthy. And that's what really matters. Every single day should be about finding solutions, ditching the ultra-processed garbage and getting back to real food. And this wasn't true all along, but it used to be on every dinner table in America, coast to coast, and we can get back there. So today's show, we've got an incredible lineup. You're going to hear from Vani Hari, Dr. Cate Shanahan, Dr. Eric Berg, Dr. Michael Nusbaum, Gary Brecka, Russell Brand, and then Dr. Arvin Singh, the Secretary of Health in West Virginia, is going to share what MAHA is doing in his state and what they're actually doing on the ground. But first, we're going to kick things off with Calley Means. He's a senior advisor at HHS, and he's going to break down the government's definition of ultra-processed foods and what they're actually doing to improve nutrition for all Americans. So let's get into it. Welcome, Calley Means.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, as you're talking, I'm reflecting on what's happened in the past year, and I think we're all anxious for more change. Secretary Kennedy's right over there, and I know he is certainly banging the table for more change, and I think that's the nature of our movement. But man, what's happened in the past year, I think, is extraordinary. I think even if many of this call want to see faster action, more action, I think we can all agree that 2 years ago, none of us could have imagined the place we'd be at today. I want to get into ultra-processed food, Tony, but I think one thing that happened on Monday is emblematic of what we're doing across a number of fronts. So Gary Brecka and some other friends on the call were there, but we went down to a hospital in Florida with Dr. Oz and Secretary Kennedy and announced what's called a condition of participation. So I think one of the key things is Secretary Kennedy's in power now. He's got his hands on the biggest department by budget of any government in human history. And that department pays out $2 trillion a year in Medicare and Medicaid payments. And there's conditions that come with those payments. So what we learned we could do is put a requirement that hospitals who receive Medicare and Medicaid funding, which is every hospital, are going to be required to not serve toxic food. And we announced this new condition that hospitals cannot be serving sugary drinks. We've all seen the stories, and I've seen it personally. My mom, who was diabetic, was served soda. And you see this all over the place. The ultra-processed food, sugary drinks, inflammatory food, that's the cause of these chronic diseases that are filling hospital beds and actually make recovery worse. These are being served rampantly in hospitals. And this letter that we announced is stopping that. Today, a hospital is out of compliance and at risk of not receiving federal reimbursement dollars if they continue serving this food. This is going to have a massive impact on patient health. And we're also working and using every level we can to look at the food that guests are served in hospitals. It's interesting when you dig in. Hospitals are the largest employer in the United States. The healthcare sector is the most employed industry in the country, which is, maybe a longer conversation whether that's a good or a bad thing, but it's true. And healthcare workers are much sicker than the average population. So by using the levers of power that we have and saying government money that is going 90% to treating chronic disease should not be funding hospitals that serve food that's fueling that same chronic disease, and also working on our convening power to look at the food that's being served to the employees and the staff and the visitors to that hospital. That's an example of a change that's going to have a significant public health impact. Tony, you mentioned the ultra-processed food definition. So this is what we've learned that industry does and special interests do. In the states, they blame lack of federal action, and then on the federal level, they blame the states. And this has happened with the ultra-processed food definition. So it's basically finger pointing back and forth. And what the food industry often says is, well, we don't know what ultra-processed food is. So we've taken on the mantle and we will be defining what ultra-processed food is. And I think there's something very interesting. We've engaged stakeholders that frankly are opposed to Secretary Kennedy and the administration on other issues. So we've been working with the American Heart Association, the American Medical Association, other major groups, because there actually shouldn't be major disagreement with Secretary Kennedy and academia on this issue. Actually, we don't think the definition of ultra-processed food is actually that complicated. So we're going to have a very common sense definition. And what that's going to allow us is the ability to put that into government procurement. It's going to allow states to have a uniform definition, to think about school lunches and where they want to serve whole food instead of ultra-processed food. It's going to send a signal to the industry of what the bar is to be defined as ultra-processed. It's going to send a signal to researchers to do continued research on ultra-processed food, which is increasingly becoming clear as one of the most important variables to whether somebody is going to be battling chronic disease or not. We are going hard on school lunches and military food. We've been having multiple meetings at the Pentagon with the senior leadership of the Pentagon. There's obviously a lot going on in foreign affairs right now, but the Pentagon, even today, thinks that military readiness and the food that our soldiers are eating is one of the most important national security issues that we face. We have a crisis of military readiness and an issue where many folks are not eligible to join the military. So from the dietary guidelines, you're going to be seeing significant reforms and better real whole food, which is going to be driving better markets to farmers, billions of dollars of new markets. It's going to help local farmers. You're going to see that rolling out this year. We're going to have baby formula announcements coming soon. We've been really working to look hard at baby formula standards for the first time in well over a decade. We've been talking and we're working through a updated transparency process for consumers like food labels. We're convening companies at the White House and at HHS every single day. You just had Walmart announce that actually the largest brand in the country, Good Value, which is larger than most other major food companies combined by terms of volume, is taking a significant amount of the additives, the dyes out of their food. I think you're going to hear more and more about the importance of regenerative agriculture. Secretary Kennedy's been speaking to senior leadership at the White House about this. Obviously, our farmers and our farm economy is dealing with extremely complicated dynamics. But I think we can all agree that putting a stake in the ground to incentivize and help farmers move to more regenerative practices is crucial. And I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about that. So, Tony, Bobby Kennedy is fighting. The administration, I think, has supported him and executed more victories than we could have imagined a couple of years ago. And we've got a lot more to do.
Thanks so much, Calley. Yeah, it just does not make any sense that we would feed junk food, sugary food, sodas to people either working in hospitals or people who are sick. I mean, why would we do that? It's just common sense. We can obviously do much, much better. And it's just great that we have, you, Bobby Kennedy, and a whole team of people who are really focused on changing these things and bringing common sense back. So thanks so much for the work you're doing. Next up, we have Vani Hari, and she's known as the Food Babe, and she's been a corporate accountability activist for over 10 years, really pointing out all the toxins that are in our food. She's a best-selling author and the founder of True Vani, which is an all-natural organic line of food and supplements. But more importantly, she's an incredible MAHA warrior, fighting to make it easier for all of us to be healthy. And that's such important work, and we're so grateful for it. Welcome, Vani Hari.
Thank you so much, Tony. It was great to hear Calley's recap of what happened this week. It was something that, for over a decade, I've been screaming into the void about, and people and citizens and everyday people have been sending me pictures of the food that they have been served in hospitals and being horrified when, one of my readers would go, have a baby and they'd see what the first meal was after they had a baby to recover from childbirth. It was, pancakes with high fructose corn syrup with caramel color level 4, an ingredient that's linked to cancer that they don't serve in other countries, that we only serve here in the United States. They got Mott's applesauce, strawberry that had red number 40 added to it and corn syrup, or they had chocolate pudding packs with artificial flavor made from petroleum, or they would be given something like this if they couldn't get much to stomach, and elderly people too, like my dad before he died. And sure, that is literally the who's list of processed, artificial, ultra processed ingredients. I mean, I every single ingredient on here is basically toxin or a poison. And under my definition of ultra processed food, this should certainly, bite the dust and go into the trash can. This is not food that we should be serving people. The Gatorade that they serve over and over again with the red 40 and the caramel color, again, linked to cancer, to people that need hydration in the hospital. Honestly, they should just be doing the IV bag with the saline. It would be much healthier than giving them Gatorade. And it's just it's so insane to think about this is happening at so many institutions across America. And it isn't until now that we've put our foot down and actually, driven a lever that is possible to start to change this. And it's so exciting because I think I just want to high level bring this back to when we really want to solve the chronic disease epidemic and we really want to solve the cancer rates and the heart disease and the diabetes, it all stems from ultra processed foods. And ultra processed foods, reducing them isn't just about personal health, it's about transforming the entire food system because these ultra processed foods are narrowly a set of commodity crops. They're primarily GMO corn and GMO soy. And these crops have been engineered to withstand heavy doses of glyphosate. And glyphosate, we know, causes cancer. There was an amazing meeting of the minds and scientists and researchers in Seattle this week that met and came to the conclusion that Roundup definitively can cause cancer. And I think that's really very interesting considering the environment we are in and this topic that we keep talking about and discussing about how we are being systematically poisoned with chemicals that are used less in other countries, that are more regulated in other countries. And I think what we really want to think about is when we talk about all of these different measures and that Calley talked about to reduce ultra processed foods and educate the consumer on what ultra processed foods are, we continue to chip away at the system that depends on the monoculture farming and the routine chemical use. We start to shift away from the ultra processed foods. And so we reduce the demand for industrial scale corn and soy production. We decrease the reliance on herbicide intensive farming practices. We create economic incentives for more diverse regenerative agriculture. We increase the amount of organic foods in the shopping space. It's the reason why Costco is the largest purveyor of organic food, is because of the demand that the food movement has created. And this is going to continue to grow the more people learn the truth about ultra processed foods and where these chemicals come from. I have 30 seconds, but I just wrote an amazing blog post on how the U.S. differs in its Roundup weed killer glyphosate policy and what the differences are and how pre-harvest crop desiccation is not used in Europe, but we use it here. And this is how we get 60 to 80% of our human exposure of this chemical. And I really wanted to showcase, like I showcased the different side-by-side comparisons of how Doritos are formulated here in the United States and how they're safer and better for you in other countries, and McDonald's French fries and Gatorade and Fruit Loops. It's the same case with our pesticides. And it's one of the reasons why we are rallying at the Supreme Court on April 27th. This is going to be a case that's being tried that day inside the building. There will be Monsanto and Bayer inside, giving their arguments for a case that they say that the EPA should be the final authority on this chemical. We know from historical data from other court cases from the Monsanto papers that the EPA does not have the rigorous scientific review that is needed to tell the truth. They have a lot of corporate capture in the agency that has prevented this from getting out. And now we are going to be fighting back and making our voices loud. This is going to be the biggest food movement rally Washington's ever seen. It is going to be incredible. Come out, bring your signs, come and march with us. It's going to be on April 27th at 9 a.m. and there's going to be some incredible speakers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vani. And, it is clear, and it polls at something like 95%, that people want healthier food. And they, want us to find ways to off-ramp glyphosate and so many other dangerous chemicals. And it's clear that we can do better, that we need to have better school lunches, better military food, better hospital food, like Calley said. And, most kids are too sick for the military. Most kids are eating 70%, processed food. And, we as a country can beat this, and we can fight this. And I'm just so grateful for the work that you've been doing and all the fighting, which I know is day and night for you. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for everything you've been doing.
Thank you, Tony.
Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg. He's known as the Knowledge Doc, and he's earned that title for being a globally recognized teacher with over 45 million followers all around the world. And for 3 decades, he's been helping people to comprehend how the body works and how to help it with practical strategies for better health. So he's an incredible thinker, he's a writer, he's a researcher, and he's another one of those MAHA warriors who's working at this around the clock as his top priority in life. So we're very grateful. Thanks so much for coming on again, Eric.
Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it. I want to chime in on what we're talking about. There's some fascinating things related to the junk food industry and children. They manipulate the food in various ways. I'm going to talk about 3 different ways. One is it's called the bliss point optimization. So they tweak the exact ratios of the salt, sugar, and fat just to make it nearly impossible to start eating it. But the second thing is fascinating. There's something called sensory-specific satiety avoidance. That's an actual thing. It means designing flavor combinations so your brain never gets tired of the taste. So the stop signal never fires. And then you have something called consumption velocity. This is the engineering of refined foods that literally are so refined it disappears in your mouth. So by the time you eat it, it's actually the signals don't get to the brain. So you basically keep eating it and eating it and eating it. So these are behavioral food engineering terms, which I was like incredibly blown away when I started learning about this whole technology of engineering for dependency. Basically, they're just modeling after the tobacco. So the intent is just to override children's brain signals to stop eating. And I was one of those kids. I lived on junk. And, if you take your kids in the grocery store and they're hungry and tired, good luck. They're just going to demand the thing with the little, prizes in the cereals. I used to be that kid. But in December 2024, 11 companies were sued for designing addictive food products and marketing them to children. So the FDA and NIH have now launched a joint initiative modeled on the Tobacco and Regulatory Science Program to study these products the way they studied cigarettes, and that's really good. And I think the reason that it got this far just boils down to an interesting definition of the word food. In 1938, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act defines food as, and I'm not kidding, articles used for food or drink. That's what food is. It's literally a circular definition. So under that definition, a product made from industrial starch, refined sugar, solvent, extracted seed oil, synthetic flavors, petroleum dyes, it's legally identical to a whole egg. And that is the loophole. And this is why that definition needs to go. We need to replace it with the biological definition. So we're not asking to even necessarily ban everything, but we're just asking one thing, just to tell people the truth, put a score on the package, let parents see in 3 seconds whether they're handing a child actual food or something that resembles food that is, shouldn't be called food, but it's engineered just to bypass these kids' hunger signals. So the people who are designing these foods knew exactly what they were doing. And now it's time to have the parents also know exactly what they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. And, that's something that I had never heard of, consumption velocity. It's, all of these terms, it's just crazy what they've done. And the idea that we've been lied to, we've been manipulated, we've been given food that is supposed to make us addicted to it. And, and we've been given food that's not even really food. So this has got to change. It's starting to change, and it's changing because people like you go out there and say it day after day. So thank you for continuing to say it. And, we're just going to keep on fighting. And in the next 3 years, I think we're going to change the way everybody thinks. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on all of these companies. So thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Russell Brand, and he's a consciousness explorer. He's an incredible writer, and he's used his massive platform to question mainstream narratives on health and wellness and faith and all kinds of other things. And he's got a great new book coming out. We're going to tell you all about that soon. But he's been a great MAHA warrior and has helped us day after day on his show, helped all the people in this country who are hoping to kind of learn the truth, to not be brainwashed, and to have a better sense of what they're putting into their bodies.
Sorry, message. Hey, Tony, firstly, you're looking incredibly well after excuse me, everyone, I've got to do this MAHA call. I support MAHA. I support Tony Lyons. I support the MAHA movement. There's good people on here. Gary Brecka comes on here. Dr. Oz comes on here. Secretary Kennedy comes on here. And many, more important than that, actually, are the many MAHA activists who are continuing to make a difference at a time where politics is becoming increasingly fragmented and more people feel doubt, don't they? Like a lot of us feel sort of, oh no, what's happening in this coalition? Well, guess what I heard the other day, Tony? Like the MAHA voters are going to be super important in the midterms. By MAHA voters, what I mean is those of you that supported Trump and the MAGA movement because of Secretary Kennedy, because of his position on vaccines, people that might be concerned about that. What's it called? Glyphosate. I'm talking about that thing that's in fertilizer where immunity and indemnity has just been granted to some big agriculture interests. Man, I know what we're talking about is hyper-synthesized and what do you want to call them? Sort of synthetic foods, processed foods. It's so obvious. The thing that's excited me about the MAHA movement from the beginning was the idea that there is something that will help us get beyond this giddy, stupid, incessant, pointless cultural division. Some people willing to rip each other's guts out over Israel, Palestine, even though I acknowledge it's an extremely significant and becoming increasingly yet more significant issue. It seems to me there are so few wins available to us in that territory. The Straits of Hormuz, small though it may be, not easy to wrench victory from that, it seems. Whereas the idea that Americans, American voters, American taxpayers, American citizens, the American people have the right to eat good food, and that the interests of manufacturers of food and people that profit from people eating addictive, disgusting, toxic food shouldn't be put ahead of every American. Black or white or Muslim or atheist or Christian or autistic or Republican or Democrat. There is no category that is exempted from the requirement to eat good food. And the fact, as I've said before in this very forum, that an idiom like junk food can nest within the English language is an indication of immersive insanity. Junk and food do not belong in the same place. Junk goes in the trash, food goes in the mouth. Once you're putting junk in your mouth, you're engaged in a dark communion, worse than the cannibalism that Christianity's worst and theist detractors would diagnose in the Holy Communion. You're involved in a cannibalism of spirit. You're eating filth. You're eating counterfeit. You're captured already by the devil. You're in the devil's kingdom. The reason I've become Christian is because things that I felt, believed, thought for a long time prior to coming to Christ are in Scripture and in Him. Did you not know that this world is run by the evil one? We fight not against earthly rumors, but against dark powers in heavenly principalities. If you're wondering why the world is evil, it's because it's being controlled by evil forces. If you're confused as to why great people like Dr. Oz and the incomparable Secretary Kennedy can make only limited differences while operating within these systems, not to go terribly off message, is because the systems themselves are designed for corruption. The system exists for big food, big agriculture, big pharma. Everyone on this call knows that. Why are we pretending otherwise? And yes, someone like Tony, a great and brilliant man there, is in the unenviable position of having to carry water for an idealistic movement that has great, great goals and simple and in any sane world, achievable ones. Let people grow and rear food organically near to where it is eaten and then let them eat it and not have the intervention of a million mad interests, whether it's Kraft or some other loopy logo that would fill you up with sugars and preservatives and bizarre colors to the degree where if you can chalk off one cancer-causing chemical, we have to dance around in the streets like it's gay pride, like it's some kind of Stonewall, when actually what's being asked is human beings eat human food, eat human food. Oh man, the Super Bowl ad at least was fantastic. Tony, man, I hope you're recovering well. I love you.
I'm feeling great, and thank you. And I just want to tell all the people watching this show that Russell has a new book coming out. It's called How to Become a Christian in 7 Days. And this book might change your life. That's all I'm going to say. But then, Russell, you mentioned the midterms, and, this has been something that I think is really critical. So 12 to 14% of voters are undecided now. And I think that these voters really care, just as a main thing in their lives. They care about food, drugs, vaccines, pesticides. But the companies that make all these products, they want to tell everybody, don't think about any of these things because they're not good for the midterms, that people don't really care. But you can imagine why they would make that argument, because they're hoping to get 7 months where there's no progress made there. So they're trying to say the only thing people care about is affordability. And that just isn't true. And, one of the main things that ties into that is that 40% of bankruptcies in this country come from chronic disease. So they come from exposure to these products that these companies are trying to tell us people don't care about. So it is a game. And I'm really grateful that you talk about these kinds of games on your show every single day. So thanks for doing it. Thanks for doing it all the time. We're grateful. Read Russell's book. Love Russell. He deserves it.
I love you. Bye, mate.
Thanks. Next up, we have Dr. Arvin Singh, and he serves as the Secretary of Health for the state of West Virginia. He was appointed in 2025 by the incredible Governor Patrick Morrisey to lead a statewide transformation focused on improving health outcomes, strengthening workforce capacity, modernizing data and care delivery systems. He's really the driving force behind the state's rural health transformation plan and all things MAHA in the state. So he's a great friend of MAHA and a great warrior, and I'm grateful to have him on the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you to the MAHA Action Team. I'm honored to have the opportunity to be here and speak today. As Tony said, I'm Arvin Singh. I'm the Secretary of Health for the great state of West Virginia. I'm going to walk through a few actions we're doing here in West Virginia. We're not interested in talking about health differently. We're actually focused on doing it differently and focused on execution. And that starts with leadership. Governor Patrick Morrisey, he set a clear expectation early on that this wasn't going to be incremental. It was going to be a substantial shift. And that shift starts with confronting the root of the problem. As folks on this call know all too well, we are dealing with a chronic disease crisis driven in large part by what people are consuming every single day. And that's ultra-processed foods. As people know, these foods are cheap, they're accessible, they're engineered, and directly tied to obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and declining life expectancy. In West Virginia, unfortunately, we rank near the bottom in many of these chronic disease metrics. And that's not something we hide from. It's exactly why we have the greatest opportunity to lead. Because if we can move those numbers here in West Virginia, We can move them anywhere. It's similar to what Vice President J.D. Vance said at the MAHA Summit, and I was honored to be able to sit there and hear that if we can solve the severe public health crisis in rural Appalachia, we can solve them for the whole country. Through MAHA and our governor's 4 pillars, which were announced last year around when I was appointed, they're cleaning up our food, finding purpose, moving our bodies, and rewarding healthy choices. We've taken that challenge head on, and we've acted. We're one of the first states to ban synthetic food dyes in our schools, removing unnecessary additives from what our kids are eating every single day. And we're working toward removing synthetic dyes in retail by 2028. We've also pushed forward SNAP waivers, and we're strengthening our WIC program and food guide in favor of healthier choices. And in the latest legislative session, we passed the Make West Virginia Healthy Again Act to align our state programs and incentives around better nutrition, prevention, and measurable health outcomes. But policy alone doesn't get results. Execution does. And that's where our West Virginia Rural Health Transformation Program, and I'm just going to shorten it as RHTP, comes in. RHTP is how we operationalize in our state MAHA. It's the engine behind everything we're doing, and it's built around a standard that is absolutely non-negotiable. Every dollar must drive measurable outcomes, not activity, not process measures, outcomes. We've structured our RHTP program across 7 pillars, and at the center is prevention, specifically targeting chronic disease at its root. And through our program, we're going to scale nutrition, physical activity, food as medicine approaches across our state as core parts of the program. And we're working with providers and communities to actually change behavior, not just advise it. Because reversing chronic disease requires sustained behavior change, not one-time interventions. We are aligning the rest of the system around that goal. We will be deploying smarter care models that manage chronic disease more effectively. We will be stabilizing the workforce needed to deliver that care, and we'll be expanding rural access so people can actually receive it. And we'll be leveraging public dollars to attract rural and health tech innovation. All of it connected through what we call a statewide data spine, or our connected care grid, so we can track outcomes in real time and hold systems accountable. That's the shift. Historically, healthcare funds inputs, but we're aiming to fund results. Historically, systems operate in silos, but we're building integration with data, accountability, and clear expectations, and we will enforce it. If something isn't working, we don't protect it, we fix it, or we move on. And we're already seeing progress. Providers are integrating nutrition into care. Many of our medical schools are teaching nutrition in school in our state. Our governor signed into law just recently common sense measures requiring continuing education for physicians in our state around nutrition. We brought back the presidential fitness test to reinforce the importance of physical activity early on in life. And we applaud HHS, as Calley Means discussed earlier, for updated dietary guidelines and the recent move to require hospitals to align patient meals with strong nutrition standards or risk losing Medicare and Medicaid funding as part of the conditions of participation. These are meaningful, long overdue shifts that I am proud to see. And our West Virginia communities are leaning in through major efforts like Governor Morrissey's Mountaineer Mile. We're encouraging West Virginians to walk a mile every day. And fittingly, today is National Walking Day. Our team, led by the governor, just opened a new Mountaineer Mile trail today, just a few hours ago in Lake Stevens, to encourage people to get outside, get active, and take simple steps toward better health. It's an important gesture with a big message that movement matters, and we're building environments that support it. And through our Rural Health Transformation Program, it's truly outcomes-based. It's a structural shift, especially in how we approach chronic disease. And every investment we make is tied to sustainability beyond the 5 years of the funding period. We have real challenges in West Virginia, but that's exactly why we can lead. We can prove that if you take on ultra-processed food, if you target chronic disease directly, and if you align a system around outcomes, you can change the trajectory of a state. That's what we're doing with MAHA. That's what we're doing with RHTP and within our Department of Health, and we're just getting started. Thank you, and thank you, Tony and MAHA Action, for having me.
Thanks so much. And, you're doing incredible work. And West Virginia has gone from a state that was having real problems, and it's becoming the MAHA model state. And, that's to a great extent based on the work that you've been doing. So we're really grateful for your partnership there and look forward to continuing to work closely with you.
Thank you, Tony.
Next up, we have Dr. Michael Nusbaum, and he's a board-certified bariatric surgeon with over 30 years of experience in patient care. And he's got a particular focus on metabolic health, weight management, and preventative medicine, and fighting the obesity problem in this country. He's also a clinical assistant professor of surgery at Rutgers Medical School. Thanks so much, Dr. Nusbaum, for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tony. Yeah, I want to talk to you today about a practical framework for action to reduce consumption of processed foods. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share if I'm able to. And I just want to talk about an idea that I had that I actually presented to Mehmet Oz and to RFK Jr., which I think they actually liked, because I actually heard RFK Jr. talking about it on Joe Rogan. So my impression is that we actually enjoyed it. So let me see if I can get this going here. All right, so I want to talk to you about this framework that I came up with. And thank you, Tony, for introducing me. I don't need to go through this again. So basically, the core problem is consumers can't identify what foods are harmful, mostly because of misleading labels. There's no really trusted signal, and advertising is driving poor decisions. So when I shared this with Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. back in February, it's basically a system that starts off with 10 and goes down to 0. It's based on processing, additives, exposure. It's a simple, visible, scalable identification of food so that patients and consumers understand what they're looking at. It doesn't ban foods. It preserves choice. It drives market change. And I think it's politically viable. So the structure of the scoring system is that everything starts at a 10. So imagine grass-fed beef, farm-raised eggs, that's a 10. And you're deducted points all the way down to a 0, which is a fully ultra-processed synthetic artificial food. So, for example, artificial colors, you lose a point. Artificial flavors, you lose a point. Synthetic preservatives, you lose a point. High fructose corn syrup, you lose a point. Refined seed oils, you lose a point. Protein isolates, you lose a point. Emulsifiers, you lose a point. Artificial sweeteners, you lose a point. And greater than 5 processing steps, you lose a point. And then, honestly, and I've heard RFK Jr. talk about this a lot, if you don't see these ingredients that are in your house, you got to wonder what they're actually putting into it. But I'm certainly open to any other suggestions on here. But the labels will be color-coded. So from 10 to 7 will be green, 6 to 4 are yellow, and anything 3 and below would be a red label. Consumers understand colors instantly. It's easy for a consumer to identify how bad a food is if it's based on a color, and it reduces consumer label anxiety. So they're understanding what they're looking at pretty quickly. It's easier than counting calories. It forces manufacturers to reformulate what they're actually doing, because if it's a red label, more than likely consumers are going to pass by it and not purchase it. So the consumers are going to be forced by economics to then change the formulation. It's protecting children. It encourages ingredient transparency. And I think it's politically sellable because it's information. It's not regulation. We're not denying anyone the ability to have anything. This could then be expanded into SNAP incentives. So if a SNAP recipient is perhaps using more than 50% of their money towards green labeled products, maybe they get a 10% incentive. Federally funded institutions should be limited to green and yellow labels and not allowed to present red labels to the consumer. Retail integration is important. School alignment, which we're already looking at. Schools that are receiving federally funded programs should limit what they're providing to the students. There could be insurance incentives based on how much of you're purchasing of the green products, and it allows for population health tracking as well. This framework is not final. I'm actually seeking input from this group to maybe make suggestions on how to change it or make it better. But I'm not looking for credit for this. The goal is to make America healthy again, and I'm really looking to see if there's an opportunity for a way to improve what we're actually creating here.
That is great. Thank you so much for coming on. And a couple of great points there, that we're not looking to ban anything. We're not looking to increase regulation. We just want radical transparency, and we want people to know what they're eating, what they're putting into their bodies, so that they can begin to make better choices. And that's Absolutely. How I think we get a real bottom up change that then starts to transform the way people look at food, pesticides, vaccines, drugs, all of it, because they're actually making choices based on knowledge of what these things are.
The average consumer doesn't understand what these labels are. That's really the biggest problem.
Definitely. So thanks so much for coming on, and we hope that you'll come on many, many times.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Look forward to helping.
Thanks. Next up, we have Gary Brecka, and he's the visionary founder of The Ultimate Human. He's a human biologist, a biohacker, a longevity expert, and as I've said many times, he travels all around the world, teaching people how to live healthier, more vital lives. And he's one of the toughest and most serious MAHA warriors, MAHA champions. And we're grateful for all of his help. He's clearly working at it day and night, posting things to something like 40 million followers. So thank you so much for all the work you do, Gary.
No, it's just amazing. In fact, I attended the announcement with Secretary Kennedy and Calley and Kyle Diamantis from head of Human Foods, and it really was such an amazingly historic moment. But I was sitting there in the front row, and I was watching the Secretary deliver this message at this beautiful children's hospital, and I couldn't help but think how ironic it is that this is such a cataclysmic win for MAHA to just get nutritional foods into hospitals. It seems like such a common sense initiative that should have been around for the last 50 years. We know that those are the most vulnerable. Those people they have the least amount of choice when they're in a hospital bed. They have to eat what's put in front of them. It's something that was very near and dear to my heart. I lost one of my very, very best friends from a very young age. Steve Novak, and I lost him to a late-stage colon cancer. And I did a post almost a year ago today about, and it was a video of him in the intensive care unit at Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona, as he was being treated for advanced colorectal cancer. And on the tray in front of him was pureed applesauce, a Seagram's soda, a sugar-free Jell-O, and a fruit cup. And then afterwards, they brought in a little tear-off cup of Chobani yogurt. And it absolutely astounded me. No proteins, no fat, no nutrition. He's there with colorectal cancer. And I didn't make a big stink about it, but I actually, pulled one of the nurses aside and I just talked about it. And she basically explained to me that they have no choice. This is the menu. This is what's provided. What I found also fascinating about yesterday's announcement is that Medicaid and Medicare are reimbursing these hospitals to the tune of $400 per patient per day for meals. And their average spend is around $18 per patient, which means there's another $382 in the allocation that could easily handle the very marginal increase of the cost of handling whole foods versus highly processed foods. I've talked about this a lot on MAHA before. I'm not going to go back through the stats again, but I was a data scientist before I moved into the longevity space. And we knew from big data analysis, from looking at deaths in 371 million lives, that the dosage didn't determine the poison. the cumulative dosage determined the poison. That nobody got mercury poisoning from a single piece of tuna fish. What they got mercury poisoning from was repeated consumption of mercury-laden foods. And this is the crux of highly processed foods. They don't make you sick quick, they make you sick slow. And they disrupt cellular machinery. You know, the number one killer of human beings worldwide is cardiovascular disease, and yet the leading cause of cardiovascular disease is ultra-processed foods. And I can say that because of all of the correlated studies that we have. I mean, as far back as 1988, when coronary artery disease was in the spotlight, I read a peer-reviewed published article on the first symptom of advanced coronary artery disease being sudden death. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what are some of the leading causes of coronary artery disease? Everybody has cholesterol, but not everybody has atherosclerotic plaques. Everybody has an immune system, but not everybody has an autoimmune disease. Everybody has healthy cells, but not everybody develops cancer. Not everybody develops this metabolic shift in their cells to become cancerous, because all cancer cells were at one time a metabolically healthy cell. It just changed its cellular machinery. So what is interrupting the machinery? What is turning cholesterol into a villain? What is calling the immune system to our organs and triggering all of these inflammatory cascades and idiopathic conditions? What we, it's my favorite word in medicine is idiopathic, of unknown origin. And I believe that the meta-analyses and the big data point to ultra-processed foods. So I'm just ecstatic about this. It seems like a simple common sense win. Sadly, I don't think that we're going to see the real trend analysis on this for probably 5 or 8 more years, when you really start to see the downtick in cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndromes, which is keeping 3/4 of our military men and women out of the military right now. They don't qualify for military service, not because of lack of physical fitness, but because of metabolic syndrome. So this is a monster win for us. I think everybody should be screaming this from the mountaintops and get the mojo back in MAHA, because I think our message has gotten a little clouded lately, but this should be one of those 98% issues that no one can disagree with. And I want to debate with the other 2% that don't think that this is a massive win. But thank you so much for your time today. It's an absolute honor to be on these calls.
Thanks, Gary. And that's a great point, that it's going to take, 5 to 8 years. And that's why we need Bobby Kennedy to stay in that job for the next 5 to 8 years. And that, I think, is a real possibility. That's what he wants to do. And that's what I think all the people watching this show want him to do. But, it's a great point, too, that, you're in the hospital, you're in school, you're in the military, and you're being force-fed junk food, real toxic food. And that is just going to lead day after day to a toxic load that manifests in chronic disease. And so, we can do better. We can fight it. We can lower the toxic load, and then we can have better health outcomes. And, you're a big part of the reason why I think that's going to happen. That you just hitting it day after day to millions and millions of viewers and teaching them that they've been lied to and that they can do better, they can make better choices, and they can have better outcomes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Dr. Cate Shanahan, and she's a board-certified family medicine doctor, former nutrition consultant for the LA Lakers, and a New York Times bestselling author whose work has brought ancestral eating principles to millions and millions of people. Her research and her clinical insights have helped catalyze a growing movement towards seed oil-free, real food nutrition. And she's currently launching an online course designed to help busy people master all the habits and the strategies of eating real food, unprocessed food, making it easy and affordable and, something that people can really manage day to day. So thanks so much, Cate, for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me on. And it's an honor to be on here with everybody else. I'm here because as a child, as a young woman, as an athlete, I was suffering every day from the effects of processed food, but I didn't know it. My parents didn't know it. My doctors didn't know it. Nobody could help me. Nobody could explain why I kept getting injured. And it wasn't until I got so seriously injured after I'd gone to medical school that I did something that was really hard that almost no doctors ever have to do, and that is to question the narrative. And I discovered that I've been lied to about saturated fat. Now, why does this matter? Because we are talking about processed food. We are eating processed foods because of this lie about saturated fat. When you have to, if you think about it, when you take away saturated fat, you take away butter, you take away animal fats, you take away most animal products. These are fresh foods. When you take away easy, delicious, fresh foods that probably have some kind of super high accelerator index, but they never test like fresh meat or hamburgers, I don't think, against processed food, these foods are delicious. But we were told, doctors learn that saturated fat is bad. Therefore, these delicious foods, we can't eat it. This chases us towards processed foods. And this process of scaring people away from real foods and chasing us towards processed foods began so many generations ago that almost nobody is alive anymore who remembers that there was a time when doctors told people to drink whole milk and to eat butter. And I want everybody on this call to understand, if you take away nothing else, one thing from what I have to say, that is the worst of the processed food ingredients are the seed oils. I call them the Hateful Eight because there's 8 of them. Corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower, rice bran, and grapeseed. These are refined and they are unstable and they develop toxins in the bottles after they leave the factory that doctors and dietitians know nothing about. These toxins are so potent that when they're including things like aldehyde. So when people work with these toxins, they have to wear hazmat suits. Seed oils are the worst thing in the food supply, partly because they are so ubiquitous. Most of the people, so I work with people every day who also are suffering from the effects of processed food and don't know it. And I have to tell them that they've been eating more seed oils than they realize, even if they don't cook with them at home, because they are in 80% of the foods that we eat in the grocery store. Most people who aren't consciously avoiding them are getting 20 to 30% of their total daily calories from seed oils. And they are not just in obvious processed foods or things that we know are unhealthy, right? We all know fried food is unhealthy. We all know sacks of chips are not healthy. Well, I'm here to tell you that the reason that they are so unhealthy is the seed oils. It's not the salt. It's not the potatoes in chips. It's the seed oils. And what they do to our bodies is, well, I've made understanding exactly what they do to our bodies the focus of my professional career. So far, I've filled up 5 books with how these oils and the other 2 main ingredients in processed foods, being the refined carbs and the refined proteins that were already called out, how these things lead to specific diseases. And so just to give you an example, I recently broke a leg and I have some help here now that I didn't need before. And the young lady who was helping me, she is a go-getter. She is amazing. She is like overqualified to do what she's doing to help me. But she is being held back in her life and her career because she has a son who she loves that is autistic. And he needs so much of her care and so much of her time that she can't work more than 24 hours a week. This is preventable. I know the administration is looking for the cause. Well, I'm here to tell you that an overlooked factor has been the seed oils. Seed oils have components, foods cooked in seed oils have components that are known neurotoxins. They are known genotoxins. They are known to cause birth defects. They are known to cause mutations and cancers. And because dietitians, physicians, and healthcare researchers believe that they're the healthy alternative to animal fats, almost our entire nutrition research regimen so far has overlooked these oils as potential agents of disease. And in fact, the structural blind spots and biases around saturated fat have prevented seed oils from even being evaluated properly, so that dietitians and doctors think that they have been evaluated and they think that medical science has tested them. But the fact is, they have never been tested as independent variables in the past 30 years of medical research, which is most of what anybody in healthcare will be able to access and go back to. So the Hateful Eight: corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower. Memorize those. Those are ingredients in your stores. That's the first 6. The last 2, rice bran, grapeseed. If you can get these out of your life, this is the most important step you can take to improving your health. You will notice a difference. And it's not just because you're cutting out processed food. It's because these are toxins, and it's a shameful legacy of American medicine that we have not only not pointed these out, but that we have promoted them as heart healthy for generations. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Cate. That's a crazy stat that seed oils are in 80% of our food, and that 20% of the calories that we eat have are from seed oils. So, clearly it's going to be really hard work, but, people are going to have to start to read labels really carefully. They're going to start to, have to unlearn all the things that they've been told and start drinking whole milk, eating butter, eating eggs, eating meat, and, really trying to avoid eating seed oils because, like you said, they're toxic. They can cause cancer. They can cause all kinds of chronic disease. So thanks so much for the work that you've been doing for so many years, and hope to have you on many, many times.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to all of you for joining us on the MAHA Media Hub and for tuning in each week. And as always, thanks to all the speakers for their insights, their dedication, and their daily contributions to the MAHA movement. We're excited to announce the launch of our new website, and it is at mahaaction.org. So not mahaaction.com, which is the old one, mahaaction.org. And on there, you're going to find our legislative tracker that allows you to view and take action on all the MAHA bills locally. And, it's a tool to find out all kinds of great organizations and what they're doing to advance the MAHA mission and movement. And there's a page dedicated to tracking MAHA victories and a place to sign up to join our growing mailing list that now has over 2 million subscribers. And then, please follow us on the MAHA Report on Substack that has about 200,000 followers. And then come to our roundtables with the MAHA Institute. Each year, we're going to have the MAHA Summit, and then there are MAHA films by Jeff Hayes. There are MAHA books, MAHA parties, and big events all around the country. And then, follow all of the influencers who come on this show. They have hundreds of millions of followers, and they're a big part of the power of the MAHA movement. And, we're going to harness every bit of that power to work with everybody in the government, every cabinet member, every branch of government, to support and be a powerful resource to the Trump administration going into the midterms. It's going to be so important because we need to make sure that Bobby Kennedy and his team can complete that mission that they've set out. And that, we have to have that power so that we keep them on mission and out of congressional hearings. So following this call, you're going to get a comprehensive email showing clips from this show and then calls to action. Please share that. And, please help us grow this movement. And then, Calley Means is, kind of in limbo now as far as being confirmed as Surgeon General. So please call Senators Collins, Murkowski, and Cassidy. So Senator Collins, her phone number is 202-224-2523. Senator Murkowski is 202-224-6665. And Senator Bill Cassidy is 202-224-5824. Make sure that they know how important this is to the millions of MAHA warriors all around the country that we won't stand for them holding this up any longer. And then, go to the peopleversuspoison.org. It's a new website, and sign up to attend the April 27th rally that Vani Hari mentioned. It's so important. We have to find a way to off-ramp glyphosate and all kinds of other dangerous chemicals from our food. Thanks for joining us once again, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 4 p.m.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
There's a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.